All right, so we're talking Kim Jong Un today, huh?
Yeah, really diving into the deep end on this one.
This is going to be a wild one, I can already tell. We've got his Wikipedia page pulled up here.
Multiple language options, always a good sign.
Always a good sign. So, Kim Jong Un, the supreme leader of North Korea.
Well, on the surface, sure. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg with this guy.
Right, because it's not just any leadership, is it? It's like dynasty stuff.
Exactly. His grandfather, Kim Il-sung, basically established a cult of personality that's still going strong today. It's like a hereditary monarchy, but with a communist twist.
And a whole lot of nukes thrown in for good measure.
Um,
But then you hear these stories about him being this huge basketball fan. It's kind of hard to reconcile that image with, the whole supreme leader thing.
Totally. It's like those pictures of him hanging out with Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
You've got to wonder, is this just a guy who loves the Chicago Bulls, or is there something more to it?
Maybe a bit of both. It's like this weird fascination with Western pop culture that seems to contradict everything we think we know about him.
Absolutely. It's a side of him we don't often see, and it makes you question how much of his public persona is carefully crafted.
It makes you wonder. But then there's the other side of the coin, like allegedly having his own uncle executed.
Yeah, the execution of Jang Song-thaek back in 2013 was a major turning point. It wasn't just about consolidating power. It was a very public and brutal message to anyone who might question his authority.
Definitely sent chills down the spines of a lot of world leaders, I imagine. I mean, the UN even considered investigating him for crimes against humanity. That's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, it goes way beyond your typical political maneuvering.
Yeah.
It really makes you question his methods, to say the least.
So we've got a leader who's inherited a powerful, isolated nation, allegedly orders the execution of family members, but also seems to have a soft spot for Western pop culture.
And just when you think you've got him figured out, he throws you a curveball. Like his economic reforms, for example.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, didn't he try to modernize things a bit? Which is kind of surprising when you think about how isolated North Korea has been for so long.
Right. It's this whole Bunjin thing he's been pushing, trying to develop their economy at the same time as their nuclear program.
Wait, so it's like he wants to have his cake and eat it too?
Yeah.
Modernize the country, but still hold on to all that nuclear power?
Exactly. It's this weird balancing act where he's allowing some elements of a market economy to emerge, giving businesses a bit more freedom. But, and this is a big but, it's not like North Korea is suddenly turning into some capitalist utopia.
Right, because they're still dealing with massive food shortages and all sorts of other problems.
Exactly. So, yeah, he's trying to modernize, but on his own terms and without giving up any of his power, which naturally brings us to the whole nuclear situation.
Yeah, because that's the thing that really keeps the rest of the world on edge, right?
Absolutely. And under Kim Jong Un, their nuclear program has only gotten more advanced and more concerning for everyone else.
I mean, it's like he's playing this high-stakes game of chicken with the entire international community.
Right. He seems convinced that these weapons are essential for his regime's survival. But of course, it also leads to sanctions, isolation, and all sorts of other consequences that, ironically, make it harder to achieve the economic progress he's aiming for.
It's like a vicious cycle, and then there were those summits with Trump. Talk about a roller coaster.
Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Those summits were major news.
Yeah, I remember everyone was glued to their TVs, trying to figure out what was going to happen.
Especially that first one in Singapore in 2018. I mean, think about it. A sitting U.S. president meeting with a North Korean leader?
Like, ever.
It was unheard of.
There was this sense that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something big. Like we might actually see some real progress on denuclearization.
Right, like could this be the breakthrough moment everyone's been waiting for?
Yeah. Exactly. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, what does denuclearization even mean in this context? Is it as simple as North Korea just getting rid of all their nukes?
Well, not quite. It's a pretty complicated process, actually. We're talking about North Korea agreeing to completely dismantle its entire nuclear weapons program. And not just saying they'll do it, but actually proving it.
So like letting international inspectors come in and make sure they're following through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Verifiable and irreversible. And in exchange, you'd have the U.S. and other countries lifting sanctions, providing security guarantees.
So it's a huge leap of faith on both
A
sides.
huge leap of faith, which is why those summits were so tense. Everyone was on the edge of their seats wondering if they could actually pull it off.
Right, all those photo ops and handshakes. But did anything actually come out of those summits besides some interesting photo ops?
Well, they did sign some agreements, but the concrete progress was pretty limited, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
See, the Trump administration, they wanted complete verifiable, irreversible denuclearization up front,
Mm.
like right away.
Makes sense. I mean, why trust a regime like that, right?
But Kim Jong Un, he wanted to take a more gradual approach, concessions here and there, things like that.
I guess that makes sense from his perspective too, right?
And ultimately, those differences were just too big to overcome, and the negotiations stalled.
So back to square one.
Well, not entirely. I mean, the summits did open up a dialogue,
Yeah.
right? And they showed that both sides, at least, they were willing to sit down and talk to each other.
Which is something, at least.
It's a start, even if it's just a small one. But it also showed just how incredibly difficult it's going to be to actually resolve this whole nuclear issue.
It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not just the U.S. involved in this whole thing either, right? What about China? They've got to be a major player here. They're right next door to North Korea, after all.
Oh, absolutely. China's role is absolutely crucial. Historically, they've been North Korea's closest ally, providing economic support, diplomatic cover, the whole 9 yards.
Right, they're like best buddies, right?
Well, it's complicated. Their relationship has had its fair share of tension over the years, especially when it comes to this whole nuclear issue.
Really? What do you mean?
Well, China has never been particularly thrilled about North Korea's nuclear ambitions. It makes them nervous, to put it mildly, having a nuclear-armed neighbor right on your doorstep.
Yeah, I can't say I'd be too excited about that either.
And they're also worried about the instability it creates in the region, the possibility of a nuclear arms race. And they've even gone as far as supporting UN sanctions against North Korea.
Wow, really? That's a pretty big deal, considering their history. So even China's drawing a line in the sand.
In a way, yes. And there's always a but with these things.
Right.
China also doesn't want to see North Korea completely collapse, right?
Right.
Because if that were to happen, it could mean chaos on their border, a potential influx of refugees.
Not to mention, the U.S. might gain more influence in the region, and they definitely don't want that.
Exactly. So they're walking this very delicate diplomatic tightrope, trying to rein in North Korea's nuclear program without destabilizing the entire region,
Sounds like a recipe for a headache.
to say the least. And then there's South Korea. We can't forget about them.
Yeah, what about them? Any hope for a breakthrough on that front?
You might be surprised to hear this, but there have actually been some surprisingly promising developments with South Korea in recent years. Remember those joint appearances at the Winter Olympics a few years back with the unified Korean team?
Oh, yeah. That was huge. It felt like the whole world was watching.
It really was this amazing moment of unity. And it wasn't just for show. Kim Jong Un actually met with the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in, several times. They signed agreements, pledged to work towards peace and denuclearization.
So after decades of hostility, they were actually sitting down together talking peace. That's incredible.
It really was remarkable. But, and I hate to say it again, but
There's always a but.
like the talks with the U.S., those efforts eventually stalled as well. The same old roadblocks, the complexities of denuclearization, the deep-rooted mistrust, the weight of history.
It's like they took a few steps forward, then got yanked back again.
It's true. But even with those setbacks, those moments of hope, those attempts at diplomacy, they offer a glimmer of possibility.
Okay.
They show that change, no matter how difficult, isn't completely out of reach.
It's like a roller coaster ride we can't get off of. And speaking of roller coasters, didn't you say Kim Jong Un was a huge fan of something else besides basketball? Like something totally unexpected?
Oh, yes. How could I forget? The man has a serious soft spot for Jackie Chan movies.
Jackie Chan, get out of here! Jackie Chan, seriously. You're kidding.
Nope. The man loves his kung fu comedies, apparently.
Basketball, Jackie Chan. It's like every time you think you've got Kim Jong Un figured out, he throws you for a loop.
He's definitely got a flair for the dramatic. But, when you think about it, this whole fascination with Western culture, it's actually pretty telling.
What do you mean?
Well, it suggests that he gets it,
Yeah.
He understands the power of soft power, the importance of image. And maybe, just maybe, it hints at a desire for something different, something more for himself and for North Korea.
Interesting. It's easy to forget that behind all the titles and the propaganda, we're dealing with a real person, a person with their own, complexities and contradictions.
Absolutely.
Speaking of complexities, we haven't even touched on how he handled the whole COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, North Korea basically went dark when the rest of the world went into lockdown, right?
Yeah, they were like a black box for a while. They're one of the first countries to completely shut down their borders, remember?
Right, right. And for a while there, they were claiming 0 cases, which, come on.
Yeah, that seemed a little far-fetched.
To say the least. So what happened? Did they ever come clean?
Eventually, yeah. But it wasn't until, like, May of 2022.
Wow, that's a long time to keep things under wraps.
It really is. And you know what's interesting? How Kim Jong Un reacted.
Oh, so
He didn't downplay it at all. He actually publicly acknowledged the outbreak, called for nationwide lockdowns, even mobilized the military to help get medical supplies out there.
wow, so he actually took it seriously.
He did. And get this, he even criticized party officials for failing to contain the virus.
Whoa, 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 hold up. Criticizing the party. In North Korea, that's practically unheard of.
I know, right? It's like a glimpse into a totally different side of him, a side that, honestly, we rarely ever see.
It's kind of like he's human after all.
Exactly. It suggests that even in a closed-off system like North Korea, there are limits to what even someone like Kim Jong-un can control.
It definitely makes you think. So before we wrap up this deep dive, I'm kind of curious, what do we actually know about Kim Jong Un, the person, his family life, all that?
Well, we know he's married to Ri Sol-ju, and we've actually seen a lot more of her in recent years compared to previous first ladies of North Korea. She often appears with him at public events, even international summits.
Oh, interesting.
It's a pretty big departure from how things were done in the past.
Huh. So like a little bit of a modern touch.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And they reportedly have 3 children together, though, unsurprisingly, details about their personal lives are pretty much non-existent.
Right, I can imagine. Top secret, probably. But still, it's fascinating to get these little glimpses into his world, like beyond the politics and the nuclear threats. What kind of person is he? What does he do in his free time? What makes him tick?
Well, besides his love for basketball and Jackie Chan movies, of course.
Of course, but seriously, it's a question that I think a lot of people would love to know the answer to.
Definitely. Unfortunately, I think the true Kim Jong-un, the man behind the curtain, is likely to remain a mystery for a good while longer.
A mystery for the ages. Well, that was quite the deep dive. We covered a lot of ground today, from his family dynasty to his fascination with Western pop culture, from nuclear threats to surprising economic reforms. It seems like every time you think you've got Kim Jong-un figured out, he throws you a curveball.
He keeps us on our toes, that's for sure.
He certainly does. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. It's clear that Kim Jong-un's story is far from over. Who knows what surprises he has in store for us next?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
That it is. Until next time.